I'm going to take about 30, 35 minutes to take you through a little bit of a journey. And then I really do want some more interactive discussion to happen. So please do ask questions at the end. Comments, agreements, disagreements, challenges, they're all equally important because this is also a learning opportunity for me. And I'm really keen on that. The other thing I was going to say is it's a real privilege to be here. I know how wonderful University of York is. I've worked here. I love it here. I know how amazing people are, how dedicated people are. And I know how innovative it has been in so many things. So I'm also looking forward to some of the wonderful work that's happening here and how we might be able to do some things together as well. Right. So let me just start. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some of the early slides more quickly because they are things you already know. So I'm not going to spend too much time on them, but I will spend more time towards the middle and end where this is more about case studies, what's actually practically happening, pragmatic outcomes. But there will be so much in there that I wouldn't cover. So feel free to ask me anything about anything that would be not there because there's a lot going on as you anticipate. Right. So there's no doubt AI talk is everywhere. A bit too much of AI talk. How many of you have been invited to go to events and all? First thing you see is, oh, it's about AI again. How many people contact you about selling you services, products, things that have all got AI in them? Basically, AI is everywhere. And from a research viewpoint, AI has been going on since 1950s, but it's the public access angle that's changed recently. And therefore, that's really brought it to everyone's attention. But what's really interesting is that AI is now being discussed from a regulatory perspective, not just from a technology perspective, but also what does it mean for AI sovereignty? What does it mean for knowledge sovereignty, national interest, et cetera, et cetera. And that's really generating some more interesting dynamics and debates. The other angle here is that on that note, AI is also being picked up as a technology of national interest in many, many countries going this route. So UK has 6 technologies on its national roadmap. AI is one of them. Same for EU, same for US, alongside quantum and engineering, et cetera, which also generates some very interesting dynamics when it comes to trusted research landscapes. Who can you collaborate with AI on? Who can you not collaborate with AI on? And also dual purpose technologies with something as broad as AI can itself be quite a big challenge in its own right. And I won't go through many forms of AI. Probably everyone knows about it. We've got narrow AIs, which is what we mostly use. More and more agentic AI, giving us the feeling of a general purpose AI coming through. What I also want to highlight is AI control is highly imbalanced. So we had a fantastic presentation here from Google about Gemini and actually really, really good outcomes from there. But if you look at the market valuation of some of these big giants, NVIDIA, who generates majority of the chips for GPUs, is currently market valued this year at $4.43 trillion. Anyone wants to guess if you convert that into a GDP of a country, do you want to know where would it stand in international rankings? Any guesses? Would it be in the top 10? Okay. Would it be in the top 5? It would be the maybe just third largest country in the world in terms of market valuation, after US and China, followed very closely by Germany and India afterwards. But in fact, majority of the top 4 will be in the top 10 in terms of their GDP equivalence power. That's how big these companies are in terms of the control of the market share that they have. But it's not just that. It's also who's producing the largest amount of AI models. So AI model generation at the moment is primarily coming from US. So, and majority of these companies are also based in US. So 40 models last year came from, and these are notable models rather than all models. 40 notable models came from the US, followed closely with China with 15 and European Union at 3. So there's quite a bit of disproportionate generation of AI and control of AI that's going through. Again, something that you are very familiar with, so I won't go in detail, but these are the 6 most popular large language models. And what's really interesting is that governments are realizing the sheer amount of power that the big tech companies have in that control. So we've now seen increasing investments that governments are making within their own countries to have more AI sovereignty and have more knowledge sovereignty around that. This is from the last year. This is not the total investment. These are the investments that have kicked off in the last year. So Canada's promised that they'll spend about $2.4 billion. China's spending about $47.5 billion just in the semiconductor industry. because they want to take more control over that, over Taiwan. France is spending about $117 billion, India about 1.2. You get the idea. But what's really, really interesting here is that none of these things, these are still disproportionate when it comes to US, because in the US, the private industry themselves are spending over $109 billion on AI model generation. So there's huge, again, disproportionate investments and outcomes. And more interestingly, the responsible AI ecosystem remains uneven. Firstly, there aren't that many standards that determine whether these big models are actually using responsible frameworks in the background. There are increasingly new models coming in. There are 4 or 5 standards that are now being used. And if you want to know more about this, I would recommend the Stanford AI Index that they've published in 2025, because that does talk about how responsible AI models are being used. And I think it would be fair of me to say that majority of the big models and big companies are not really using those responsible models in the background. But the governments are also showing increased concern about that. And we're seeing more and more regulations around AI coming from OECD, from EU, from African Council and African Union, etc., for what core AI principles they want to see. And more interestingly, how quickly they want to see their societies evolve with that. Because if you look at all industrial revolutions, AI revolution is going to be probably a decade long. Societies don't work with that kind of pace. So I think there's a big implication on what would it mean, both for knowledge generation, but also for societal benefit in the long run. Right, I'm going to pick a couple of graphs. I'm hoping you can, I'm glad they look slightly better on the big screen. So these are the 2 hype cycles from Gartner. I picked the 2024 and 2025 hype cycles for artificial intelligence. And I don't want to dwell too much into it, because all hype cycles are an imagination of what people think the feeling is at that time. But what's really, really interesting is that in the 2024 hype cycle, generative AI was moving quite towards the end of peak of inflated expectations. Actually, I'm somehow, for some reason, assumed everyone might be familiar with these, but everyone wouldn't be. So hype cycles are a way of saying how technology moves through certain stages of kind of feelings before it becomes part of our everyday life. And usually what they say is everyone thinks this is amazing, this is an innovation trigger. And AI was that probably about 2.5 years, 3 years ago. Then it will move into peak of inflated expectations. Everyone would say it will change everything. It will change education. It will change student experience fully. And then it will go into the trough of disillusionment, where people are like, oh, actually, it's not really doing anything. We're not seeing the impact of that. And after some time in that stage, it will move into slope of enlightenment or just disappear, because it is generally a disillusionment technology. And eventually good technologies reach the plateau of productivity, because that's where they become part of our everyday life and they gain societal and educational benefits. The only reason why I'm showing this is that generative AI has moved quite rapidly. Technologies usually take a few years to move through these slopes. Generative AI has moved quite rapidly from the peak of inflated expectations to trough of disillusionment. And I don't say this about a lot of technologies, but I do think it will actually move into the plateau of productivity at some point soon, maybe in the next 2 or 3 years. But let's be critical as well. We've been here before. Some of these headlines you may have seen in many, many newspapers. Coursera was designed to be the end of traditional higher education. Second Life. Anyone remember Second Life? That was going to change the way we teach, fully, completely, eventually all immersive. Microsoft Metaverse was going to transform online learning. Probably can still do to some level, but not to the level that peak of inflated expectations were. Blockchains revolutionize education. Is anyone actually using blockchain in education at the moment, apart from research? Very little evidence of that. And an economist in last year published that AI will transform education for the better. So I think it's really important that we recognize that we've been there before. There's a lot of kind of inflated expectation that comes with these things. So it's important to be critical at the same time. But things are also different this time. So if I just look at the left-hand side of this slide, the Digital Education Council Global AI Student Survey in 2024 has basically highlighted that 86% of the students are already using AI in their studies. Happy conducted a survey back in 2024, which indicated that 66% of students are using AI in their studies and 53% in their assessments. And then Happy reconducted that survey in 2025, and those numbers drastically increased, either because students are genuinely using it more, or they are like more confident to say they're using it, which they weren't before. So 92% of students are now using it in their study, and 88% of students already use it in their assessments. But there are still things that we need to do better in higher education, and particularly in our institutions. The conversation about AI or generative AI is still too much risk oriented and not looking at opportunity cost. So we still talk about how do I protect my assessment design, or how do I protect the sanctity of the modules or the programs that I've developed. I think we need to think about what are the learning outcomes that our students should really have in the next few years, and how do we redesign our programs, our modules, our assessments to support that. And I know conversations are happening, but they're not happening at scale at this stage. I also think that if we really want to showcase value, and AI investment will require value chain outcomes, it will require some longitudinal studies. It's moving so fast that we can easily fall into the trap of invest here and then invest there, and actually don't know what value it's actually generating. So it's really important to look at longitudinal analysis, probably about 3 to 5 years of what value it has generated for us. I personally quite strongly believe that we should look at AI as a holistic, multifaceted approach. I think it's very, very important to look at your priorities. Assessment was on everyone's minds. Assessment probably still is on everyone's minds. But there is so many more things with AI that we can look at. If you want to generate value for the institution or ROI against that, I think that holistic, multifaceted approach delivers that better. And we definitely need different governance and co-creation models. Good AI implementation plan should be co-created. And York is more optimized than Leeds. Let's just put it that way. But if I have to go through the standard governance processes in Leeds, it would take me 8 months or 8 committees and 4 months to just get something through the committee structure. And that's just not going to work with the pace that we need with AI. This is an image from EAB, from EDUCAUSE, who basically did an AI landscape study, and they were analyzing where academics, faculty, and students' anticipation around AI is. And what was really interesting is that mostly there was a positive shift in their anticipation from AI. They were looking at more personalized learning, better learning analytics, more predictive analytics to do more personalized learning. They were also looking at accessibility improvements, particularly for both staff, but also for students with disabilities or learning needs. But they were also very keen that academic dishonesty will increase, plagiarism cases will increase, and they don't know how to solve that. There were also really interesting dynamics around assessments becoming more meaningful. And I think that's a really positive thing. And for those who are looking at assessment design, I think one thing I often say in Leeds is AI hasn't changed anything. It's just shown a light on how some of the assessment design was quite poor in the first place. So I think there's more discussion going on about synoptic assessments or programmatic assessments rather than single essay-based assessments. And similarly, there's more concerns around authenticity of the outcomes that AI generates, but over time that will improve. This is a slide from EAB, and EAB were predicting in 2024 what can generative AI help us do in higher education. So this was their summary of what it can do on teaching, so writing support, AI to support assignments, brainstorming, etc. And we saw an example of that. I only came in the last 10 or 15 minutes with the Google Gemini session, and they were showing how you can do it to write research report ideas or collaboration ideas, etc. So there's quite interesting dynamics there. But it's also really interesting on assessment feedback and curriculum design. And also, I think someone asked the question about why would students pay us fee if everything can be done through generative AI? And I think there is some really interesting dynamics about where do we actually adopt AI and where do we not? And I can give you this as an indicative, and you can disagree with it because I don't fully know whether I agree with this or not. But at the University of Leeds, one of our stances is that we will use AI to do teaching support or academic support, but not teaching itself. What does that actually mean? Nobody yet knows. But I think there's that concern around what value generation is and what are we here for versus what technologies can help us do. So I think there's more deciphering to do on that note of that disentanglement of human slash compute elements. Again, I won't go through all of this. And again, OFS conducted an event, a webinar with students, and it was open to everyone. I'm hoping someone would have attended it from here as well. I think it was in May of this year, where they were talking about what's their current position on use of AI is. And I've picked up a few points from that webinar where they were talking about support and encourage innovation and experimentation, including in relation to AI, focus on outcomes and protecting students' interests. And I think that's a really, really important point. We shouldn't use AI to do something which students do. It's not in their interest. So when we say, okay, should we embrace it? I would say if they are going in an AI-enabled industry market or marketplace or a world which is AI-enabled, then I think it is in their interest to know about AI. It is in our responsibility then to train them on AI. So I think it is really interesting the way it's phrased, protecting students' interests. OFS has also encouraged institutions to think more creatively about their approaches to AI and develop clear guidance to encourage uptake. I think that was a really interesting model again. But more interestingly, they really wanted to continue the sector to continue to engage with each other and with them about what their approaches will look like going forward. And if you go back to the Russell Group principles as well, I think it was principle number 5, which was talking about share best practices on an ongoing basis as well. Right, I'm going to move on to now the practicalities and pragmatism and what we did in Leeds. So firstly, AI is a big topic, and it can be really, really daunting if you're thinking about where do we start. And therefore, we picked up the Gartner model around the simplest answer is often the right answer. So we said, okay, here is the model with which we are going to look at. So we will shape the AI strategy for the university. There are 4 components around this strategy. They're all trying to solve a different kind of problem. So firstly, developing resources and assets for AI, that's human resources, but also digital resources, training resources, guidance resources, etc. Value and outcomes is very important. You can just use AI for the sake of AI. So definitely define what measures and value chain outcomes will we seek from AI. Early on, and I don't know how much fragmentation is here in York, we had huge amounts of fragmentation. There were people in comms and engagement who were doing their own AI thing. People in library were doing their own AI thing. People in IT were doing their own AI thing. Academic schools and faculties are all doing their own AI things. And to be fair, early on, we simply couldn't or didn't want to control it, but we also couldn't coordinate it. I think now we are more on the coordinate approach. Let's coordinate the AI deployment because that's important, not just from a value generation perspective, but also from a cybersecurity perspective. And then also AI systems as well. Again, EDUCAUSE did the study about what is it that higher education, what's driving higher education to adopt AI. And the very first one was the rise of student use of AI in their courses. But when you read it more, it actually goes hand in hand with point number 2, which is they are very concerned about risk of inappropriate uses of AI. So at the moment, the driver, or back in 2024, the majority of the drivers were fear-driven rather than opportunity-driven. People are going to misuse this. People are going to adopt bad behaviors. And again, I think we need to shift the narrative to what are the opportunities that exist with AI now. And I love the third one, which is concern about falling behind. We are all in some kind of bizarre AI race, and I don't understand that. We're a very collaborative sector, so we don't have to race. We can just support each other in that journey. Right. I mentioned the University of Leeds. So so on that strategic side, very first thing we said was, what's our strategic commitment to AI? So we have a strategy, a 10-year strategy that was launched in 2021 called Universal Values Global Change. We had a new vice chancellor, still have a newish vice chancellor now, Sheila West, who came about a year ago. And she said that she's going to do a midterm strategy refresh. Strategy is still the same, but the prioritization has shifted. And one of those commitments is that we will embrace AI. So that's a really, really positive thing because as a university, we now clearly know that we will be embracing AI. That just helps the conversations and communications a lot. As a consequence of that, we have an implementation step, which is number 15, which is to develop and publish university's AI strategy. And also in one of our enabling strategies, we have a digital transformation enabling strategy. We have a direct focus on generating the right platforms, tools, and technologies to support AI-based research as well. So we are also looking at that. And then picking up on these things, we started thinking about where is our current state, if you want to measure where we are in that journey. So we picked up this model where basically the first area is looking at, do we have AI trust, risk management, and secure management of interfaces, structures, etc. And I think we are there. We've done that. We've been looking a lot about how do we deploy AI securely, how do we ensure that people have secure access to certain things, their data is protected, etc., etc. The next step was to democratize AI. So we have kind of done that in the sense that we are a big Microsoft institution, just like you're a big Google institution. And just like you have your students and staff have access to Google Gemini, we give access to Microsoft Copilot Chat, and that's equally available to everyone. So that's stage one in democratization. But we also have another stage, which is we are now looking at a tool called Nebula One. Don't need to know too much about the tool, but what it does is give everyone access to all the latest models. So it's kind of product or company agnostic. You can have the O4, O5 models on that from ChatGPT. You can potentially have Gemini. You can potentially have other models, and it allows you to have a single interface to multiple models and use them in your own way. Ultimately, we want to move to AI augmented development and then ideally intelligent applications, so things become more interesting at that point. I mentioned the holistic AI side of things. So when we were adopting AI, we spoke with a lot of other universities. We spoke with Yale, Oxford, Manchester, University of British Columbia, lots and lots of different partners across the globe. And we asked them about what they are doing with AI. Naturally, everyone was talking about AI and assessment design, but there were lots of other things that were also happening. So we used that to say, what are the components that will be there to develop a good AI implementation plan? So we've come up with these 12 components for AI implementation plan. The very first one is AI positioning. What's the university position on AI? So this was developed when we didn't have a position statement or a very clear guidance on we will embrace AI. We've also changed governance. I'll talk a little bit about governance, so I'll want to delve into that. Who will actually deliver AI? Because eventually we are a fragmented, large organization. Immediately, is it IT job? Is it library job? Is it educational support services job? Is it someone else's job? It becomes very confusing and territorial at times. We need some finances to support it. How do we do interdisciplinary AI? So, for example, in Leeds, we have interdisciplinary AI strands in transport, in social engineering, in social justice. So, how do we bring those to the top? Digital skills. I compliment York. Huge amounts of work has happened. Really, really great stuff in York. Leeds is nowhere near to that. Infrastructures, as I mentioned, partnerships, programming, communities of practice, and constant conversations around the topic of AI. I won't go through all of them, but I'm going to give you a chance to see which one you really want to ask me questions about afterwards. I'm just going to go with 4 of them, but if you have a question about any of the others, please do ask. So AI positioning was the very first thing. Without that, nothing else works. So we now have a position statement on AI. Which is available at that link. You're very welcome to explore that at your own leisure and pace. But what's really important there is that there are 3 core guiding principles around our use of AI. It will be inclusive and equitable access. It will have ethical considerations and integrity built into this. And we will be looking at collaboration and global leadership. And I think all of those help us achieve certain different things. So we have to look at responsibility when we look at AI deployments, but we are also not scared. And we have to be bold if you're looking at global leadership. So I think this all gives us that framework of balancing act in that way. We changed our governance quite a bit. So previously with AI, we had 2 working groups. We had a working group on AI in student education. We had a working group on AI in research. And they were fantastic, both. And I would say that because I was co-chairing one of them. It's very selfish. But I think what was really, really good about those groups is they were born at a time when they were absolutely needed. And what they were able to do was to build the student policies, taught student education policy, the PGR student education policy around AI, the research use of AI, the staff guidance around AI, and they were able to publish those rapidly and quickly. And we did a lot of co-production work with our students in generation of those guidance documents as well. But we needed something which was more agile. We needed something that was able to make decisions at an authority that it has. So we've now changed the model to still 2 groups, but now we have an AI steering group, which I chair and has the 2 pro-vice chancellors for research, innovation, and teaching student education and experience, the dean for digital transformation, the academic lead for AI, comms and engagement person. That's it. It's a small group. It's an impactful group. It's delivery focused. We basically make decisions. And then we have a much wider group called AI Stakeholders and Experts Group, which is all to seek advice, guidance, which is academic, professional services, and not students, education, academics, professional services, and AI experts in general. And then we are about to form an AI Student Council because we were missing the student angle to this, and that will basically act as the third group in that governance route. We are directly reporting into the university executive group, which really helps just make all the decisions on their behalf. Skills and automation has been a big issue. We can talk a lot about AI, but actually our general skills are quite small. And in fact, let me be honest, general skills are quite poor across Leeds when you scale it across all staff and all students. So, and also our provision of digital skills is extremely fragmented. So if you're looking at student digital skills, that will be provided by the library. If you're looking at academic digital skills, that will be provided by the Digital Education Service. If you're looking at professional services digital skills, that will be provided by Organizational Development and Professional Learning. But if it's an IT tool, that will be provided by IT. And nobody understands this. Even being in the institution, in the middle of it, I can't understand it, let alone the end users. So we thought long and hard about should we basically scale it all and start all over again. And ultimately, we've decided that we are going to create now 2 centers for excellence. One of the Center for Excellence will be on digital and data skills, which will bring all these services colleagues in there, but that their strategic direction will be set by that center. And the other center we're creating is on automation. We're not calling it AI. We are very clear on that because the moment we call it AI, it becomes an AI center. I think this is about automation. This is about digital efficiencies. This is about ensuring that we automate our processes. And AI understanding is very poor at the moment. When we say, what is your problem? Can AI help solve? Generally, the problem can be solved by just simple automation, not AI. So that's why we're focusing on automation over there. We're also using Multiverse. I think Jot might also be looking at that, if I remember correctly. We have got about 80 staff in the first cohort of training around there. And we now also have a generative AI compulsory training that all staff and students have to do. We were really thinking hard about should it be compulsory, and we've now made it compulsory. And I'll show you a little bit about that. I'm going to very time, so I'm going to rush. Infrastructures, again, I've already mentioned Microsoft Copilot Chat. We've also got about 350 licenses for Microsoft 365 Copilot, which integrates into the wider suite. We're also looking at Microsoft Teams premium licenses, primarily because when we look and analyze the use of AI, it was primarily about meeting notes and actions and very little about something else. So we are now looking at actually would a Teams premium license be a better option than anything else. I already mentioned Nebula One, which gives access to all of these things. And we are also speaking with Microsoft at the moment about their agentic AI offer. This was developed as a website to showcase what we were doing quite early on, about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago now. And this was where we had our student guidance, our staff guidance, all of the tips and tricks around how to use AI available on generative AI. This is a public access website. So if you just type generative-ai.leeds.ac.uk, it will take you there. And that's been quite successful for quite some time, but we are shifting the model now. And we've launched AI Hub in October, literally early this month. And this AI Hub is dedicated to our staff. And what it is doing is creating a single hub for all AI-related activities within the university now. So information and training, events, community partnerships, engagement, we've engaged running in there, and we've got quite vibrant discussions around what's going on, quite a bit of information sharing, etc. And what I thought I will do is I'll pick the AI for Educators section. Again, these are all living hubs, so they will be constantly developed. But it basically highlights how you can assess your own digital skills with JISC. I know it's been done here for quite some time, but we've got very focused faculty level AI trainings as well. And no matter how much we say they are exactly the same things, people want them to be really customized to their own needs. So we do a level of customization to different faculties and different schools' needs, just to give the right examples. We've also got the most popular session of all of these was the literature review and libraries on how to use AI to do literature reviews. When we introduced the introduction to generative AI training before the compulsory ones, on average of 25 seats, 9 people will attend or 10 people will attend. These are all virtual sessions. When we advertised the literature review, the average was 135. So there was a very different interest. And one thing we learned immediately was that people want to know its AI use by use case rather than general. This is just a screenshot of the generative AI compulsory training. And I think the only thing I wanted to highlight was the left-hand side, which is it talks about the ethics, it talks about Secure Copilot, but it also gives some case studies on how other people are already using generative AI at the university. So it builds staff confidence in that way. And I got a very nice email from our provost saying he's literally completed it and it was easy. And that's good to know. AI literacies are quite important. So within that digital landscape, we are looking at AI literacies. So this is an EAB model of how AI literacies should theoretically evolve. And the red arrow is pointing where we believe we are in Leeds at the moment. So tier 1 is about basic awareness about public AI tools. Tier 2 is about AI integrated into modules. Ultimately, AI curriculum in courses and required AI expertise of students. I'm not sure we will ever reach tier 4, personally speaking. It's possible, but not likely at this time. But we have now gone into AI being integrated into modules. Every module design requires people to talk about AI, think about whether AI will be integrated into the design of the learning outcomes, but also the assessments itself. And very briefly on the conversations point, we ran an event back in 2024, which was the first of its kind at Leeds, which was a big digital summit around AI and me. So we brought in quite a few industry partners. So we had Microsoft, Anthology, EAB, some others. But the reason why this was really, really good was it brought it right to the attention of all the senior stakeholders. So all the pro vice chancellors, the chief operating officer, the chief finance officer, they were all in there in this discussion. I'm just going to wrap it up now in the last couple of minutes. For me, this is probably the most important slide because we can talk about AI theoretically for a long, long period of time. But what's really, really interesting for us is we really want to integrate AI into the business outcomes now. And what we did was we asked all of our colleagues who were working with us at the senior level, what are some of the problems that will help improve student education, student experience, research processes, etc. And we had 13 problems that came from that initial set of discovery. Again, I can also talk about the others, but I picked the top 6 in that regard. The first one was we are too disparate in the way we provide student experience. And we have too many knowledge bases. There's no self-service. There's no automation. So at the moment, we are working a lot on consolidation of knowledge bases between library, IT services, student information services, to start thinking about how do we develop an agentic self-service interface to support our students. So that's stage 1. That's the use case we are working on right now. The other one was about course search pages. We had about 1,300 course search pages, which had their descriptions and colloquialisms and all kinds of language on them. So we said, okay, can we use generative AI to help you improve that? The answer was people were really fearful. So they said no. So we moved them from, okay, this is not going to impact your job, to, do you want to learn how to use AI to do this in the future? And again, that psychological safety and that angle of what does it mean for people's jobs is quite critical in that as well. For our students, we're looking at can generative AI help automatically tailor CVs based on the job descriptions so that their CVs are optimized in the right fashion. We also have an issue at Leeds about bespoke disability statement creation and that effort that it takes. So can we automate some of that? Part of it is generative AI, part of it is robotic process automation. Speed and quality of feedback. Anyone with NSS in their mind would be aware of that. And similarly, we've kind of partially discarded the AI-powered personal tutor bot at this time, partly because we are not really keen on using AI to do teaching yet, but also because we have a spin-out that's coming at the moment with a student spin-out, which is doing exactly the same thing. So we are looking at whether we can just enable that spin-out and use that into our own use. And in terms of our plan for next year, going back to the strategy, AI strategy and plan development, I think that will come out in the next few months. KB knowledge-based consolidation, agentic AI is the one top priority use case, so we're working on that. We need to deploy Labiola 1, give access to people so they can play and experiment with it. The 2 centers for excellence, one on digital and data skills and one on automation, they should be launched within the next few months. Continue the use case-led driven approach. So we will now do some more wider consultation on what other use cases we can solve. We are hoping to do another digital summit in 2026, potentially focusing on research. and bring the research angle to it more closely. AI and immersive technologies, so Leeds is quite good on immersive side, so we're looking at what the relationship between the two might be. Um, Very strongly looking at collaboration and partnerships. So if any of this fancies you and you're thinking, oh, we should do something together on something, very keen to hear that. And purpose not talked about Knowledge Institute case because in my accountability, I have both libraries, IT services, and digital transformation of the institution. And one thing that I'm very keen on is that we really, really deeply look at what the foundation of good AI is, and that is good knowledge. And we have some big issues around equitable access to knowledge, knowledge security, ethics of knowledge, particularly when it comes to big technologies, and how a future of the knowledge would be in that context. So we are actually thinking about building a whole institute around that, which will do both research teaching, but will be based in the library. So it's being led by the library in that context. But at the moment, all I can say is it's a case rather than a done deal. That's all. That's all I wanted to say. Probably a gazillion angles that I haven't touched on, but thank you for listening. Thank you for your patience with me. I'm keen to listen, answer, be challenged. But thank you. Appreciate that.
Are there any questions for Masud? Questions or comments?
Hello. Thanks very much for giving us an overview of everything that Leeds is looking at. I wondered if you could say something about the issue of, well, sovereignty, really, because you had a bunch of things in there that got my spider sense tingling, discussions of like it's help and support for students and disability and stuff. And let's imagine instead of whatever tool you were using Grok, for example, and then all of a sudden, at the whims of the world's most divorced man, all of a sudden your institution now believes in white genocide in South Africa, for example. Now, I would hope that our Google colleagues wouldn't be quite as extreme in that. But the point is, it is believable to imagine, given that they're American models, that transness is erased, or that other such sort of social issues that we may hold as different to America at the moment becomes part of the approach. Now, I know I'm not suggesting that you would be using the output of these models blindly, but it is a big question that all of a sudden things and the way that we interact and talk and deal with society is dictated by not even you, but by people outside of our own country.
Yeah, I mean, how many hours do you have? But the short answer would be it is on our radar. And when I briefly mentioned infrastructure, but actually there's a lot more to that infrastructure definition. So at the moment, the infrastructure for us is layered in three different angles. The corporate infrastructure, so that's how do we use the infrastructure for productivity gains. And that is primarily Microsoft. And I think for you that it would make sense for it to be Google in that context as well. Then our second layer is what we call more controlled infrastructure. So that is where we have direct control over that. So that's, for example, Olama deployment in our high performance computing infrastructure, which is within our control fully. And some of the things that we'll be doing, for example, the bespoke disability statements, we wouldn't be using Nebula One or Microsoft tools for that. We'll be using our own implementation in our own secure infrastructure for that. And then the third one is we are also actively looking at open participatory infrastructures. So how do we support those kind of infrastructures which are coming from EU, for example, or from within the UK? That is more hazy at this time because we don't know the full details, but that is on our ambition that we really want to look at that at least. So these conversations are way above us in the sense that national sovereignty, knowledge sovereignty, data sovereignty, and AI sovereignty conversations are absolutely happening. We know trusted research is a big thing at the moment, and the dynamics of that keep changing. So and if I'm honest, I think part of our thinking when we now deploy infrastructure is what would it mean in the next 2 years? Who will be our allies? Do we want to have full control over it? What would be the impact of tariffs? Things that we never thought about in the past, we now think about everything in that context. So yeah, huge impact, but let's have a more longer chat about that.
Richard is pointing to his watch. We'll have one last question. And microphone is going up to the back, sorry.
Thanks, I enjoyed your talk. I had a slightly related question. You mentioned that you have plans for introducing some agentic AI. Do you have already ideas about what that agentic AI would be, let's say, authorized to complete independently? Would it be anything? Would everything be oversight? There's some stuff that it could do by itself?
The short answer is no. And the reason behind that is quite early stages for us. We are at the moment looking at what data would flow between these agents, which data will they have access to, what authorizations will they have access to. So our primary use cases would be those which are public access information rather than deeper systems with access. So, for example, we can use agentic AI to go get data from Banner or from Blackboard or from other tools. That is not going to be on our deployment as stage one, primarily because we haven't done our homework on what this would mean. That's the short answer.